The summer I was 10, the old house at the end of our lane wore lilac in its hair, and breathed with a slow, generous sigh, as if it had waited for us to arrive, since the first coal of morning lit the river white. Behind its windows, rooms hung with quiet dust, like settled rain. And in that heat, the world seemed to tilt just a fraction, so the ordinary became suddenly steep with memory. My mother called the house a shelter. My father called it a mistake, waiting to happen. I called it a place where the light lingered too long on the floorboards, as if time itself had decided to rest there a moment longer than elsewhere. It was there I met Lila, a cousin no one spoke of much, who came to stay that summer while her mother wandered a city for work and never found her way back. People said she ran away, or grew too old for us, or learned to be quiet. I knew only that the house kept asking for her name, and I kept answering. Lila had a way of moving at twilight, when the house exhaled the day's heat in little sighs that sounded like purrs from a long-lived cat. We would slip the latch on the attic door, that resting place above the stair where the light could not decide if it would stay or depart, and draw a circle on the wooden floor with chalk. We would lay 3 small shells inside the circle and set a lantern in the middle, a weak yellow beacon that cast a halo on everything it touched. Then we whispered her name, Lila, 3 times, softly, as though we were coaxing a bird from a cage. If we listened with our whole bodies, the attic would answer in a way words could not. A tremor through the boards, a breath against the back of our necks, a scratch at the inside of the wall, as if the house itself were clearing its throat for us. We did not fear what we could not name. We believed the ritual could make a corridor between our lives and hers, if only for a little while. A corridor along which a child's laughter could drift from one room to the next, and linger like a scent. Lila would have told you the same, if you could have coaxed an answer from her lips. She would tilt her head toward the circle, and let the light fall across her sun-kissed hair, and then she would say nothing at all. Just listen, as if listening were the point of the listening. The old house listened back in its own patient silence, a listening that took its time but never forgot. The summer faded into a long, too hot autumn, and the autumn bled into a winter so quiet you could hear the river's bones sigh beneath the ice. Lila left without a word, as if she had never spoken at all, and the house exhaled a longer, heavier breath after she was gone. We found her things in a trunk in the attic, one of those brittle white dresses with buttons that demanded tiny fingers, and a diary that smelled of old rain and candle wax. In the margins of the diary there were small marks, neat as church fonts, little symmetrical don'ts and do's that had never been mine. I did not know what they meant then. I only knew that the handwriting did not belong to Lila. Later, in the long hours of winter, I understood something cruel. The house had kept a record of her, and in some sense kept her for itself, the same way it keeps the memory of a song on the inside of a chest where no one can reach it, but keeps listening anyway. Time did not hurry to tell me I was wrong. Years passed with a patient elbow on the clock's shoulder, and the old house stood through it all, the lilac blooming again each spring, as if to remind the air what scent belonged to a memory rather than to the living. I kept returning, not out of longing, but because the house never stopped inviting me to sit in the kitchen's pale light, to listen to the sound of rain on the roof, to pretend that I had not forgotten how to march when the floorboards spoke in their quiet, creaking sentences. I am old now, and I live alone in that same house, a quiet witness to the years that have crowded the rooms like guests who forgot to leave. The circle on the attic floor remains. its chalk lines pale but resolute, the 3 shells still waiting like patient little stars in a cracked sky. At dusk, when the light passes through the upstairs windows and makes everything seem made of gold and breath, the lantern glows with a remnant of flame that doesn't belong to any wick I have lit. The house makes room for a whisper I cannot ignore, a sound that should not exist, a child's laugh that isn't mine, a name that should have faded with the supper dishes and the laundry. One evening, when the air tasted like rain held just beneath the skin, and the lilacs leaned against the glass as if listening, I went up to the attic out of a habit heavier than memory. The circle was still there, though the chalk had a way of softening and then hardening again, as if the floor remembered how to redraw itself when no one asked it to. The 3 shells lay in their place, but something else had found its way in. A photograph. I had thought memory's work finished with the last trunk torn open and the last shirt folded away. I had believed the attic would keep its own counsel from here on. Yet as I held the picture in the lantern light, I saw something else in the frame. A shadow behind us, a thinner version of the room's walls. A room that did not belong to the present. It looked as if someone stood just behind us, but the image in the photograph was still. There was no one there to be seen, but a suggestion that someone had once stood there, breathing slower than we did, listening for a truth we were both too young to know. The shell's edges gleamed faintly, as if touched by frost, and a hollow sound, like a key turning in a lock, passed through the walls, though the house, as always, did nothing to betray a secret. Then, in the bookcase that never moved, I found what I can only call a door, a narrow seam of wall that had appeared during the long hours of many days, almost unnoticeable, as if the house had decided it would reveal something only to the patient, the one who listened long enough. I pressed my hand to the seam, found the old groove there, and pushed. The wall yielded with a sigh I could hear in my bones. Beyond the seam lay a room I did not recognize. A room that felt as if time had folded there like an origami bird and forgotten to unfold it again. It was the attic I remembered, yet altered, the way a memory alters when seen through the tremor in an old mirror. The circle lay on the floor, no chalk, but the circle itself, as if drawn by the floorboard's own memory. The shells rested in their places, but there, in the lantern's wavering glow, stood not Lila, not any girl I had known, something smaller, a presence rather than a person, a version of myself in childhood clothes who looked at me with the same question in her eyes I had carried for years. She did not speak, and neither did the